There are poems that just get wrapped up in the zeitgeist, that there is something, some kernel of truth in a poem, in a novel, in a movie, in a song. There's a kernel of something specific to the now in that thing, which makes it absolutely go ballistic. And what I'm going to do in the analysis part of today's video is try to drill down into why it is that Roll the Dice by Charles Bukowski has hit this type of critical mass in the popular culture, mainly the popular online culture, and I would say mainly the online popular manosphere type of culture. Welcome to Strip Cover Lit, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I'm Adrian Ford, and we are here for another poetry discussion, which will appear in 3 separate playlists here on the channel. Number 1 being the poetry discussion playlist, now approaching 700 poems strong. Number 2 being the Charles Bukowski playlist, and number 3 being 30 must-read poems. This video will have 3 different sections. We will go from here into a short biography on Charles Bukowski. Then we will have the types of poetry for which Bukowski is best known, sort of breaking down why it is that people know Charles Bukowski before getting to the analysis portion of this video. So, who was Charles Bukowski? Charles Bukowski, good old Chucky Buck, born Henry Charles Bukowski, or more accurately Heinrich Karl Bukowski, in 1920 in Andernach, Prussia, the Weimar Republic. Sounds kind of strange if you know him as the beatnik poet who cursed and drank and caroused in California, but you're wrong. You're also wrong because he wasn't a beatnik, at least he said he wasn't, and he was born in Germany because his father, Heinrich, was part of the American occupying force in the Germanic territories after World War I, and he, being of German descent, decided to stick around afterward. The elder Heinrich had been a sergeant for the United States Army and got his friend's sister pregnant. Now, we're getting a little bit closer to the Bukowski that we know. That sister was known as Katharina Fett, not related to Boba. And obviously, the baby resulting from that pregnancy was Charles Bukowski. In 1923, the family would move to the United States, Baltimore, Maryland, to be more specific. It seems that the family had difficulty making it, and if we're to take Charles' word for it, probably because his father had trouble finding work, or trouble keeping work, or trouble just going to work. And when Charles was 10, they moved to Los Angeles. The city may have been new, but his father wasn't. Bukowski often talked about his father's abusive behavior, and we're left to wonder if this is where the rough side of Bukowski comes from. If we are to take Charles Bukowski's poem A Smile to Remember as autobiographical, then his mother was the type to try to be positive regardless of circumstance. And while that sentiment does not track precisely into Bukowski's poetry, it's not that hard to imagine the disposition, smiling through the pain, translating into Bukowski's hallmark aloof attitude toward the outside world. If his father ruined his home life, it seems that acne wreaked havoc on his social life. The young Bukowski suffered from what was called acne vulgaris, which was actually so bad that he would receive regular medical treatments. Facing abuse at home and no comfort away either, Bukowski said he turned to alcohol. At 13 years old. By the time he was in his early 20s, he was writing and had some success getting short stories published, but apparently it was not enough success to keep his attention, and he quit writing and spent a decade sometimes working, sometimes traveling, and usually drunk. In 1948, he met Jane Cooney Baker, who was 10 years his senior and one of the loves of his life. They would sometimes live together. And by the mid-1950s, he was writing again, perhaps inspired by a near-death experience due to an ulcer. And by the late 50s, he was finding regular publication in smaller and upstart magazines. And in 1960, Bukowski's poem His Wife, the Painter, was published as a broadside. Later that year, he would see further success with a chapbook of poems titled Flower, Fist, and Bestial Whale, sent to press in October. In 1962, Jane Cooney Baker died. It was a loss that devastated Bukowski seemingly for the rest of his life. In 1963, he met Francis Dean Smith, a fellow poet known as Franci, and the following year, Bukowski's only child, Marina Louise Bukowski, was born. It was not enough to calm him down, but he did find regular work in 1967, writing a regular column titled Notes of a Dirty Old Man for a paper called Open City. The column was later adopted by Los Angeles Free Press. And in 1969, John Martin offered Bukowski $100 per month to write full-time, an amount that would translate to just shy of $900 today. Martin called Bukowski the new Walt Whitman. This was the beginning of Bukowski as a professional writer. His life would reach a new low point in 1977, when he found himself in St. Joseph, Missouri, to film a cameo in a movie called Supervan. The movie itself has become something of a cult classic, but no one should ever have to visit St. Joe. Bukowski's visit marks the second best thing to ever happen to St. Joe, just behind being the birthplace of Marshall Mathers, a man who is himself best known for a bit role in the 2001 movie The Wash, and just ahead of being host to the Kansas City Chiefs' yearly training camp. Fourth on that list is a 1987 occurrence known simply as The Event, in which a Labrador stood on its hind legs and took 7 consecutive steps, as reported to the local media by one Shirley Meredith, who was later arraigned for shoplifting, which is generally accepted as the 6th biggest event in St. Joseph history. All told, Bukowski wrote more than 5,000 poems, hundreds of short stories, and 6 novels. In 1993, Charles Bukowski was diagnosed with leukemia, and on March 9th, 1994, he died. And what kind of poetry did Charles Bukowski write? Well, he's often kind of referred to as a beatnik. Well, what are the beatniks? This from poetryfoundation.org. Beat poets sought to write in an authentic, unfettered style. First thought, best thought was how Central Beat poet Allen Ginsberg described their method of spontaneous writing. Poetically experimental and politically dissident, the Beat poets expanded their consciousness through explorations of hallucinogenic drugs, sexual freedom, Eastern religion, and the natural world. They took inspiration from jazz musicians, surrealists, metaphysical poets, visionary poets such as William Blake, and haiku and Zen poetry. In his article, Driving the Beat Road, Jeff Weiss explains, more than a half-century after their emergence, the Beats still offer up wild style, a sense of freedom, and wonder for the natural world almost unrivaled in post-war literature. And I think that there is another school of poetry that deserves consideration when trying to classify Charles Bukowski's work, that being confessional poetry. This from poets.org. Confessional poetry is the poetry of the personal or I. This style of writing emerged in the late 1950s and early 1960s and is associated with poets such as Robert Lowell, Sylvia Plath, Anne Sexton, and W. D. Snodgrass. Lowell's book, Life Studies, was a highly personal account of his life and familial ties and had a significant impact on American poetry. Plath and Sexton were both students of Lowell and noted that his work influenced their own writing. If you're going to try, go all the way. Otherwise, don't even start. If you're going to try, go all the way. This could mean losing girlfriends, wives, relatives, jobs, and maybe your mind. Go all the way. It could mean not eating for 3 or 4 days. It could mean freezing on a park bench. It could mean jail. It could mean derision, mockery, isolation. Isolation is the gift. All the other characters are a test of your endurance, of how much you really want to do it. And you'll do it despite rejection and the worst odds, and it will be better than anything else you can imagine. If you're going to try, go all the way. There is no other feeling like that. You will be alone with the gods, and the nights will flame with fire. Do it. Do it. Do it. Do it. All the way. All the way. You will ride life straight to perfect laughter. It's the only good fight there is. Yesterday, in the video for Sonnet 116, I rolled out the Oscar Wilde quote that all bad poetry springs from genuine feeling. But I want to know, is all poetry that springs from genuine feeling bad? Because I believe that Charles Bukowski means every word of what it is that he is saying here. So there's no metaphor here. There's nothing really to deconstruct here. What do we discuss? What do we talk about? Why choose this poem for 30 must-read poems? I think that this poem speaks to many people. So what do we talk about? Well, tell me, who are the greats? Who are the greats? Poets, novelists, basketball players, football players, politicians, goddamn train robbers. I don't care. Who are the greats, the all-timers, the ones that make you shake your head with self-doubt, the ones that make you jealous, the ones that make you want to quit? Give me those names with whatever subject you want. For me, it's Emily Dickinson. For me, it's Ernest Hemingway. For me, it's William Faulkner. It's Charles Bukowski. These individuals, so good at writing. Sometimes I just throw my hands up and say, well, it was a good run. I've got some scribbles down, but there's no point in going on. These were the greats, in my opinion, in writing. How many of them, whatever it is, whatever the list of names is that you came up with, how many of those people grew up with the internet? How many of them had Facebook in middle school? Now, accuse me of historical bias, right? a bias against where it is that we are right now. That's fine. Accuse me of historical bias. Say we haven't had the time to appreciate the efforts of those individuals who are currently going, right? We haven't had all this time with the novelists of the day, with the poets of the day, to appreciate the LeBron James in basketball. And look, that's a pretty good argument. Tell me that in his day, William Shakespeare, the great William Shakespeare, was just another playwright. And just as human culture is slow to gestate, it took a long time for the cream to rise, for all of us to collectively be able to appreciate Shakespeare above Marlowe. You can say that, and you've got a point. But you're wrong. And let me tell you, what I'm not doing here is I am not making a generational argument. I'm not saying that the Zoomers and the Alphaists, whatever the generations are, right? I'm not saying this generation is better than that generation. What I'm making an argument for, I'll get to in just a moment, but I want to put that out there, that I'm not talking about a generation being weaker than another generation. It's not it at all. I said how many of these people had a Facebook in middle school. Some people like high school, right? Some people will remember high school for their entire lives as sort of the pinnacle of what it was to be social. And maybe they didn't go to college, so that's the highest level of education they have. Or there's all sorts of reasons that people would fondly remember high school. For some people, they hearken back to childhood. It's grade school. Kindergarten, first, second, third, fourth, fifth grade. These are the times of their lives where they feel they really got to enjoy things, right? You're not going to your job after third grade. You don't get off the bus, throw your backpack in the front room, and then lace up the boots to go to work from the third grade. Doesn't happen. You're not smoking a cigarette at recess because you were up too late at the pork factory and you need to get nicked out of your mind in order to make it through the day. That's not what happens in grade school, right? So there are people who I think believe when their childhood was the best part of their life. I can understand that. I can't empathize with it, but I can understand it. Okay, great. No one loved middle school. No one loved middle school. Middle school, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, that's what middle school was in my education. 6th, 7th, 8th grade suck for everyone. And maybe you'll chime in and say, not for me. You're lying. I am not going to grant that maybe middle school was good for you. You're lying. Sucked for everyone, for obvious reasons. So, during middle school, during those formative years, you will often notice in people's biographies, it's a real weird time for them. What we have done, we have, as a society, in the social media world, we have tragically corrected towards normalcy. This poem is an argument towards individuality. If you're going to try, go all the way. He's not saying with writing poetry. He's not saying if you're going to try train robbing, go all the way. He's not saying if you're going to play basketball, train like Kobe. He's not saying any of these things. He's saying if you're going to try, go all the way. Anything. If you are going to try, you have to go all the way. That's Bukowski's claim here. How many of us today, and again, not making a generational argument, when I say today, I'm not saying that people were better than us in the 50s. I'm not saying that my generation is better than the Zoomers. I'm not making any of those claims. What I'm saying is, humans evolved to throw rocks, evolved eventually to throw spears. One of the hallmarks of the traditional masculine frame: narrow hips, wide shoulders. Why? Men were the hunters. I know that there's some arguments about this now. I kind of don't care. And they say that in Neanderthal societies, the hunting was pretty uniform. Okay, fine. Men evolved to hunt. Narrow hips allows you to plant your feet. Wide shoulders allows you to fling. You're able to put torque on something. Go look at the best pitchers in the MLB. Guys who are making millions of dollars to just throw the ball. You don't have to catch it. You don't have to run. You don't have to hit. You have to throw the ball 100 miles an hour. You can tell these guys, you can pick them out of a lineup. Narrow hips, wide shoulders, long arms. You're putting torque on that ball. But one day, someone screwed around and invented the bow and arrow. Now, there were atlatls and things like this, but one day, someone screwed around long enough to really perfect a bow and arrow. And then, those wide shoulders that made you really good at throwing rocks and throwing spears, they just made you a wider target. That evolution happens. What I wonder is, these people who go all the way, what if we just don't make them anymore? What if in a world with things like social media, where connection is so easy, where chastising is so easy, we're just creating people who don't take risk? It's very difficult, don't you think, to be the weird one? Some people can't escape it, and it really draws on them. Some people have the urge to be the weird one, not in a manufactured way, but there is something in which they have a great passion. You're sitting here tens of minutes into a video about a Charles Bukowski poem. Probably you are passionate on some level about literature. It's not the most socially acceptable thing. And society today is all about sociability. Anyone who dresses just wrong, anyone who talks just different, they're likely to be rung up for the whole internet to see. So maybe I shouldn't tell this story. I've got a friend, had an acquaintance, really, a coworker, I guess I should say, who found himself on the receiving end of meme fame. There was a meme. Someone recorded him doing this thing in public. All of a sudden, PewDiePie reacts to it on one of his videos. Millions of views. And he's very identifiable. Guys, I think it ruined his life. Because he was acting not in a harmful way towards anyone, but in an embarrassing fashion in public. And someone with him must have known he was going to do this thing. Got their phone out and recorded him. And I think it ruined his life. Not making fun of him for it. That sucks. Because he was acting like a little bit of a weirdo. Not harming anyone. Not intruding on anyone. Just was not socially aware at the moment. I just got to live with that. In that type of world, what motivation do you have to go all the way? What motivation do you have to be the one who loses people in your life for your love of the thing? We have this could mean losing girlfriends, wives, relatives, jobs, and maybe your mind. You could lose your whole life. He was singing. My friend was singing. Not very well. Right? What if what you're doing is way less socially acceptable than that? Reading books. Maybe talking to yourself a little bit out loud while you do it. Reciting the words in the book. This is why I'm talking about those middle school years that suck for everyone. A lot of people delve into things during that time. Now, they're not. They're on Facebook. They're on YouTube. Right? If you're going to try, go all the way, otherwise don't even start. If there is some interpretation to be had here, it's that statement. If you're going to go all the way, if you're going to try, go all the way, otherwise don't even start. Why? Because if you're not going to go all the way, all you're doing is wasting your time and the time of anyone else who might be there as well. This is an incredible poem from Charles Bukowski. It's not a poem you have to put a whole lot of time into interpreting. It is one of these poems of genuine feeling. I just wonder if we have lost this capacity. That's all I have for this poetry discussion. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other literature lovers. If you find yourself here by chance but not design, literature is the only thing I talk about on this channel, dropping multiple videos every single week. There's poetry every Monday, and I hope to have you back for the next one.